This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
We're doing a single chapter today.
My God, what's that like?
It's
been a while.
We're going to find out. I mean, there's two POVs that kind of both have a lot to talk about in them, so it's almost going to be like a double header.
Yeah.
Like, really.
Yeah. But yeah, we were talking about the density problem, I'll call it, with Sanderson, where podcasting through it feels very different because there's just... Each section seems to have a singular point, and that's usually as we go through, we point that out, and the subtlety isn't necessarily there. The layers aren't necessarily there, but this chapter feels a lot more layery than some of his other chapters, which makes me think either he's doing a better job of aping Jordan's style or Jordan had a lot more input into this chapter. Which it's Cadsuane and Rand chapter, which makes me think this is one of the ones that Jordan may have like mostly written, and it's early on in these books. Like I could see this being a chapter Jordan had written mostly written in the process of creating an outline for Memory of Light or starting to write Memory of Light back when he was a little bit better.
Yeah, this chapter to me is one of those ones where it feels like both authors are really present in the scene. Like you can hear them both. They're both there. Like Jordan wrote a lot of this. Sanderson did a lot of work to stitch it together. And there's more to talk about than just one point this time. There's layers of stuff happening here that are unique to the last several chapters, right? We've been really in some deep, like pure Sanderson stuff for a bit, like with Hinder's Tap. This is getting back into some more Jordanian stuff, which is fun.
But, Cadsuane.
Well,
and then a Rand POV, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are also, in Cadsuane and Darth Rand. So fun is definitely a relative term. But it should be denser, and that's why we're doing one chapter today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I really don't understand the title of this chapter. A Promise to Lews Therin.
Oh, it's the very end.
Oh, okay.
It's when Rand promises Lewis Therin that they can die. And they're both looking forward to it.
I always am trying to associate it with the voice of whoever starts the chapter in the audiobook, which is not always correct. Sometimes sometimes the title comes from a later POV. So even though the title is said in Kate Redding's voice, it's a Michael Kramer section that promise is made in.
Think of it as an opening act.
Person.
Yeah,
I'm a smart person with a lot of reading comprehension.
So sometimes there's an opening act POV, sometimes there's a closer. It just depends on where the action is. In this case, Cadsuane is definitely opening up for the Rand act.
Yes. Cadsuane at best can be an opener. At best. She can never be the main act.
Almost. No, I was going to say during the cleansing, she almost had main act energy. Except Rand was, cleansing the source, which kind of was the whole big thing.
Well, yeah, it's like she was the head of the chorus who had a really big role to play in that scene, right? The chorus actually had a much bigger role than usual. So the head of the chorus is nearly a real character.
Nearly.
Emphasis on nearly.
And here she gets her one good idea occurs in this chapter.
Yeah. And she does some really cool Aes Sedai stuff. We see her really leaning on her nifty Aes Sedai skills with I have spent years cultivating relationships that I can rely on, knowing what those tools are very easily in a time of need. Like we get to see the fact that she's spent decades preparing to just have this guy here for her in this moment. And I think that's a really cool Aes Sedai thing, just that ability to think in terms of that far ahead. So it's, she's Aes Sedaiing a whole lot here. And then Rand is just ominous. He's just super ominous. Rand just is ominous. That's like what he does now.
Yeah, I mean he's the being dark and bad and unbalancing the pattern, I think is the term that Cadsuane sort of discovers. He's creating, no longer is he the balance the pattern where some good things and some bad things. He's just making the chance more extreme. He's actually putting a finger on the bad side of things now since he's touched the dark power.
Right.
The true source.
And now he's, right.
The true power from the... Don't crucify me. I'm sorry.
Right. And this is the part where he's like, yeah, if land dies in this way at this time, that would be convenient for my plans, and that's fine. And that motivates Nyneave to do a lot. She's really goaded into more desperate action because of this attitude on Rand's part. But it really is just him being profoundly ominous at everyone who wants to help.
You know what term I'd use? He's Forsaken Rand. He's touching the Dark One. He's acting like a Forsaken. He's just against the Dark One, but he's still acting like a Forsaken.
Very Arid Hall-like in that way.
Yeah. Using the tactics of the Dark One against them.
Yeah. Yeah, saying, I can do it.
Like, we've gone from Darth Rand to just Forsaken Rand.
Yeah. He just happens to be Forsaken for the good guys, but it feels like that could switch on a dime, and that's pretty scary. And no wonder Cadsuane doesn't want him walking up to the Dark One in Forsaken mode, right? That's too much.
And I should say the icon is the star and moons for Cadsuane. So you've got, often when you have a chapter icon for one POV, you get a title for the other POV.
Oh, I'd never noticed that. Really?
I think so. I'm sure I haven't done the research on that to make sure, but that it does occur to me that we've seen some of those where I'm like, oh yeah, and then the chapter icon applies to one and the title will apply to something else in the chapter.
That would make sense. But I've never noticed that because I've never paid that kind of attention. Someone chart it out. Make a spreadsheet. All right. Well, I guess I should probably read us in, huh?
Yeah.
Chapter 31, A Promise to Lose Therin. And our symbol is Cadsuane's hair ornaments, the moon and stars. Cadsuane kept her cloak on, hood up, despite the mugginess that strained her ability to ignore the heat. She dared not lower the hood or remove the cloak. Althor's words had been specific. If he saw her face, she would be executed. She wouldn't risk her life to prevent a few hours of discomfort, even if she thought Althor was safely back in his newly appropriated mansion. The boy often appeared where he wasn't expected or wanted. She wasn't about to let him exile her, of course. The more power a man held, the more he likely was to be an idiot with it. Give a man one cow, and he'd care for it with concern, using its milk to feed his family. Give a man 10 cows, and he was likely to think himself rich, then let all 10 starve for lack of attention. Just cut it there. She just kind of goes on for a long time describing the city and how irritated she is about things. It's very good world detail, but I don't know how much I need to read to give you a sense of how cranky she is.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I'll talk about is her thought that promising food brings more hungry people who then become drains on society, which I feel like I want to talk to you about that because so many people in Portland say that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I have the thought that really it's the other way around. It's that we have a place where you can survive the winter and the summer outdoors, which brings lots of people here. And then you have to take care of them so you don't have people dying on your streets.
Yeah. The temperate climate has a lot to do with it. In the Pacific Northwest, the I-5 corridor, there's a lot of services for people, and exposure is a much less severe threat than in many other places. And those two things together are a constructive wave that leads to a very high rate of people who are unhoused going there. And it's, not great because the society that's producing those conditions is not doing a great job of preventing that from happening in the first place. But yeah, the weather has a lot to do with it. And the city, we were describing this city as being very Portland-like. So there could be a bit of that going on here, but also it's much more immediate with the Shan and White Cloaks and Dragonsworn and other things that don't have direct analogies in our world. Certainly not in the Portland area.
We're not exactly a war-torn society right now.
Yet.
Although, yeah, although sometimes it feels like it's coming. God, anyway, I don't want to talk about American politics right now.
No, we're not going to do about that. Muggy and oppressive heat, though, I think we should address. I would not describe Portland in the summer as muggy and oppressive, but it's not a dry heat either.
Yeah, because I've been places where it's muggy, and Portland is not muggy.
I have been to Iowa in June. I've only been there briefly, but I know what true mugginess is. And I haven't even, and I went to Houston one time. I haven't even been to the real South.
I lived in Houston for 3 years.
Yeah, I know that the mugginess here is nothing even on the Midwest, much less the true South.
Spent 3 years in Mississippi, too. As a very young child, but yeah.
Yeah, and our antipodal friend Lilligen, who does so much of our art, is saying 95% humidity for the last month down there, and it's been summer, obviously, because antipodal, and we only just rolled into spring up here in the north. But I can't. I could not. I would literally die. I would turn into a puddle of misery, and I would flow out the drain.
Well, and people who are outside do die. I mean, you get a week of 100 and 100, that's wet bulb point, right? You cannot cool down below your body temperature anymore. You die if you can't get someplace cool.
Yeah.
So, like, places like Texas, Houston, are literally uninhabitable year-round without air conditioning. Whether you're creating that with some sort of water flow or something like that, or our modern equivalent, right? Like, it's crazy to me when I think about how many people live in areas of this country that are literally uninhabitable without air conditioning.
Or Australia.
Sorry, the world that are literally uninhabitable without air conditioning. Yeah.
I cannot. I do not do well with heat, and I really don't like air conditioning. So I need to live somewhere that's temperate. So the Pacific Northwest is where I will be staying.
No, I mean, good thing the forecast is for cooler weather in the future, right?
I have seen maps that suggest this part of the world is going to get fucked slower than a lot of other places, which means the twofold problem, right? It's going to be not as bad here, which means lots of people will come here as other places get worse. So
why do you think I'm desperate to buy a home or was desperate to buy something? I think prices are just going up. But anyway.
I will say, though, if anyone is dealing with serious heat issues, wear some cotton, get that cotton wet, blow a fan on yourself. Use the terrifying hypothermic powers of cotton to your advantage. You will cool down. It will kill you in the winter, but it can save you in the summer.
In the winter, you want wool.
Exactly. In the winter, wearing cotton is suicidal.
But the wool can get wet and still keep you warm, which is the magical property of wool. You'll be miserably wet, but you'll still be warm. Yeah.
Right. But cotton will wick your body heat away if it is wet. So in the summer, if you're struggling to keep your body temperature down, use that to your advantage. You can do that without needing a lot of air conditioning technology. Just a little water and a fan and some cotton.
Is that why I hate the feeling of wet towels? Because it's just sucking the heat right out of my body?
That very well could be. Yeah. All right. So do you want to get back to the intro of the chapter?
I would love to get back to the intro of the chapter and talk about an actual Wheel of Time subject, please.
Okay. So it's humid. There's lots of hungry refugees, and the streets are muddy. Cadsuane is really describing the city and how the Damani are different, both, aesthetically and culturally. Well, really just culturally, like all the different things about them and how that relates to their streets. And again, very Pacific Northwest. I get like Gold Town kind of vibes with like the muddy streets and like, no, we're not going to pave them. Like, obviously it's not a gold rush town. This is an old established city, but like the super muddy streets is like, is it 1890s San Francisco? Like,
there is a street. I mean, I can go around it, but there is a street that I almost have to take to get to my current place that is an unfinished street that has potholes that, like, they're big. I have to go down and then back up these potholes. Like, that's the size of these potholes. They're not like you hit them with your tire and it just goes over it.
Oh, yeah. Portland has some genuinely has never been paved. This is still the frontier kind of city streets just tucked away in alleys. For sure.
And they throw a sign that's like unfinished road. And you're like, why? Why not finish it? You've finished every other road around here. It's a not even that long, 5 car length piece of road. Like, just pave it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. But no, just smack in the middle of the city. It's like, we just quite haven't really gotten around to it because it's just a lot to do, I guess.
I don't understand. It seems like this is the only city where I've ever been where they have unpaved roads smack dab in the middle of the city. that are just like, oh yeah, this is a country road. What? No, it's not.
Because the city was just a collection of random country roads not that long ago. It's not like your fancy ass Virginia where people have been building their bullshit cities for centuries. Like, Portland is a young baby city. It's not that baby of a city, but it's younger than what's back east.
I do think it's funny when you guys talk about your ancient homes from the 1800s.
Exactly. It's a much newer city than the original 13 colonies.
Which is much newer than, anywhere in Europe right now.
Well, yeah, that's the time progression of westward expansion and manifesting the destiny. So Cadsuane is making her way to her favorite inn in this city, which is called the Wind's Favor, where there are the parents of an Aes Sedai that she noticed was really smart and really cool. And her parents have, in fact, been quite amenable to another Aes Sedai just sort of rolling up and making them part of her Eyes and Ears network. Because, our daughter's Aes Sedai. Aes Sedai are cool. Everything's neat. And this is a investment that Cadsuane has made a long time ago. She's really been laying the groundwork for being able to have these kinds of contacts anywhere. She's been working on this for centuries, right? Like, she knows how to be prepared for anything. So she goes there for a news dump from someone who is primed to give her the best, most curated news for her purposes.
And this guy is, the humor here I actually really like, because he is running a white glove, white table, sit down 4-star restaurant with fancy dishes, and it's called Quintillan's Tavern or whatever this place,
the Wind's Favor.
The Wind's Favor, whatever. But people walk in here thinking it's a bar, right? And they look around, and he's like in a butler's outfit ready to serve you, right? He's got velvet on underneath this, but he's like almost has his apron on performatively, right? And you're just like, this is weird. Because he's not trying to make any money. He's just doing it. He's cosplaying an innkeeper.
Yeah, no, it is so funny that he is very he's just playing house. He's playing dolls, right? He's cosplaying. He's LARPing. He's just like, everyone needs to come in here and play the game that I want to play, which is that of a very refined art gallery and wine sipping shop. And no one is here for that, but also they keep coming. It's just really funny. He is hilarious in just and a Cadsuane's he has all the money he wants. He retires, and this is what he wants to do with his free time. Whatever. I don't care what people do with their free time. I don't have time to worry about what people do with their free time. It's so funny.
But it's, it's a dream I've heard so many people, especially office workers or people who've never actually worked in a restaurant, is they have a favorite restaurant they go to, and they're like, oh man, I just want to spend all day here every day, right? Because I love this restaurant. And so they get this dream of opening a restaurant that is their perfect restaurant that they would just want to hang out in all day. The only restaurant owner that I've known that likes to hang out in their place all day and not do work are the alcoholics who just drink there constantly and run the business into the ground. It's not feasible. Restaurants exist on extremely thin margins. You need an external source of wealth to keep them going if you're going to run them that way. And then you're not going to get the business that you want because you're not going to get the customers coming in. So, I don't know. It's a funny little thing. You have to be ultra rich to open up one of these restaurants, and he is, and he's got a wife who is.
Yeah, and I feel like Robert Jordan / Brandon Sanderson knew some people like that. Mm-hmm. This feels very much like they have also heard about this dream and had these similar thoughts of I don't think that's a realistic thing, and they just kind of wrote it in as haha, I've people watched enough. I've done my homework people watching. Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I've walked into those places where you're like, is this a front? There's no way they exist on these few customers having this much staff, selling this product at these prices, right? You do the math in your head and you're just like, no, there's no way. This has to have another source of income. It either has to be a front or it's got a rich owner who just wants to do this for fun. And sometimes you can get the best fucking meals, right? The joke is, where you get the best Italian food at the mob front, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's how I imagine it is. You walk in and it's just fancy quail eggs and delicate cuts of fruit and the finest wines, and it's all for like just ridiculously cheap. But like nobody's comfortable there, so no one wants to actually eat there. But yet there's this refined group of people who find that they do want to keep coming back, and so Quithlan's kind of like, "Ooh, I am overworked."
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is he's like, "I'm so overworked." She's like, "You could hire help," and he's like, "Absolutely not. It's way too much fun to be personally overworked by my own business." And it's like, "Sir, this is a very strange idea of retirement," but whatever.
He's making friends. He's making friends.
He's having a good time, and his wife is willing to support him in his strange hobby. So, whatever. It's cool. I like the world building of that, and that their daughter would have been an astute and studious person who like goes into the brown and just catches Cadsuane's eye just by being competent. I just like that as background world building.
A new brown sister. I don't think I've seen any evidence of this person before or since.
Yeah, the name doesn't ring a bell at all. She exists entirely to justify why Cadsuane has a 20, 30-year-long relationship with these people.
A lot of new characters introduced in these chapters. The background Aes Sedai, the background Ashaman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So we get some gossip. I don't know how much of that you wanted to talk about. Asalam is the king. He's missing. We know he's, trekking across the Carlane grass?
And this is where a lot of that good evidence comes from, is that he's been missing for at least half a year, right? Which means that if he was kidnapped by Forsaken, it was like the day after they got out, right? Like, he's been missing for a long time. This is good evidence for like why. No, he actually was just kidnapped on like a normal White Tower plot timeline.
But I imagine they kind of got lost and ended up doing what Perrin and Egwene did, except they didn't have Elias to correct them. Right? That
Basically,
whole
yeah, exactly. They went wandering off into the Carlane grass, pointed at literally a nothing point somewhere on the mountains, and it's not until Rand figures out how to track them down that they have anywhere near civilization.
Doesn't Cadsuane end up sending somebody to go find them, or doesn't she go find them?
I forget exactly how it goes down, but yeah, I fully believe that, they were just pointed to the middle of nowhere the entire time and just kept believing, oh, well, we'll see something eventually. And it's just, no, you're not going to see anything. Eventually you'll hit the mountains and there won't be any roads or anything, and it's going to suck.
Because then you got the Borderlands and the Trollocs and whatever.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that's all that I really think there is to talk about there. And then, we talk about the spoilage and how it's much worse, and people are inventing conspiracies about Aiel poisons to explain why the food is going bad. And Cadsuane sort of casually asks offhandedly, well, but, at least there's the balance. And he says, yeah, that would be nice, but no, that's not what's happening. And she's like, whoa, hold on. Can you please confirm that? Go and talk to your contacts and confirm for me that that's not just selection bias. Like, seriously? And we know that that's what's happening, but this is Cadsuane actually getting some hard data to say something is warping about Rand beyond his usual Therin.
That is that dark warp behind that she sees out of the corner of her eye that matches with the sort of darkness around him that's causing the unbalanced Therin effects, right? This is him touching the Dark One, and he is no longer a force to balance out the Dark One, right? Which he becomes after Veins of Gold. He then is able to put his foot down and create goodness because the Dark One is creating badness. But right now, he's just on the other side of that seesaw, accelerating its descent.
Yep.
And that's probably why he has the little statue, right? He's the only one who can really, what she sort of wonders what's going to happen if he faces the Dark One. What happens if bad things keep going? What does it mean if the balance is breaking down? I think that's another way that the Dark One can win and Rand could, quote unquote, destroy the pattern, is right. By fully giving in to the Dark One, even if he himself isn't necessarily calling down the power to destroy the pattern. The Dark One is going to keep influencing it until bubbles of evil take over, where the land is unstable, the world, reality doesn't really exist as a thing anymore, and the pattern breaks down, and the end of all things.
Right.
Right? Like, I think that's the other way the Dark One could win, is just like Rand going Forsaken Rand and just keep going. Because the land is one with him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, then the entire land would be like tainted and diseased and blighted, and yeah, that would work for the Dark One's purposes as well.
Yeah, balefire causing bale screams or whatever the heck those are.
Yeah, totally. And then she admits that she messed up with Rand, which is nice, even if she won't admit it. No, she does admit it to others. She admits it to the Aiel. She admits it to herself, and then she goes and she admits it to the Aiel. And it's nice. It's more humility than I honestly would ever have expected from her. I remember reading this the first time being like, wow, that is way more humility than all the other Aes Sedai collectively have shown.
I mean, she is balancing it with like, well, they stole the collar from me, but the Shan-Chan surely have copies, and they could have gotten a copy from them at any point in time. So it's really not that bad of a thing that I did. And that really... The reason the Adom was taken from my room was to sow distrust between me and Rand, more so than their inability to get a hold of the Adom, male Adom.
Yeah, which I completely agree with her on. That seems like, yeah, we know that many of those exist. We know that she's like prophesied to be important according to Min. It totally makes sense to drive her off.
And then this thought, he should never have to suffer the collaring at the hands of one of the Forsaken. No, you're right. He shouldn't have, Cadsuane. And what you should have. I'm like, you with your net of ter'angreal, I feel like could have been there to help him and done something more. I don't know. That's the one thing that really bugs me about Cadsuane, is she just has so much power at her fingertips, and I'm always wondering, like, what is she doing with it?
So, like, she should have kept the collar and bracelets, like, on her person so she could defend them to the last to keep anyone from getting them?
Kind of, yeah. Something like that. Like, I feel like leaving them in a warded box when you just know wards are pretty ineffective.
She doesn't know wards are ineffective.
Why
would she know that? When would she have learned that? She hasn't seen Weaves fail yet. And Shaidar Haran's a completely unknown factor. No Forsaken has demonstrated that ability.
I would argue that, I mean, they've seen Forsaken break out of a shield, but they know that's possible anyway.
Right, but this is different. This is her own innovated ward that she's never seen anyone get past, and she hasn't seen the traditional, like, White Tower wards fail. No one has told her about that yet, so, like, I don't know. I think she fucked up way more with her bullying of Rand than with her storage of the Adom.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that she's admitting that that's where she fucked up rather than the Adom. Like, the Adom's not the big fuck up. The big fuck up was being a bully.
Right.
Because I think that Rand was going to get collared by Masana or by Semirhage no matter what. Like, I think that with the Shan-Chan having... With Semirhage having made sure the Shan-Chan had multiple copies... I feel like Shaidar Haran was going to make sure that loop got closed. But slicing Cadsuane out of the picture at the same time was like... But I don't see how Semirhage wasn't going to get a chance to collar Rand. I feel like there's too much plot there to not have that happen.
The point I wanted to make is the real point is to get the Choden Call back into his hands.
Yes. She does think about how maybe the entire thing was all a distraction to get the Choden Call back to him, which, given how Vans of Gold goes... Yeah, I could buy that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a twofer, right? Get him to touch the true power and get him something powerful into his hands.
Right. And she's keeping him from having that powerful thing. So, yeah. No, I do agree that it is important to escalate his intensity by getting that Choden Call back to him. And she knows how important that would be, so she's in the way with keeping it from him. And, yeah. So she's thinking about if it's too late to change him and how he's an exemplary peasant who didn't go mad with power.
But yeah, congratulations. He didn't like get revenge or do any of the things that like...
It feels so like classist too, because I'm like, I don't know that your assumption about most peasants granted power is actually accurate, Cadsuane.
I mean, most people granted power. The nobles do it just... It would, it's probably one of those things where the nobles are just as greedy, just as destructive, just as revengeful. But oh my god, if a peasant does it, it's clearly the peasant's fault.
Right. Like, well, only people who have been raised to know about power could possibly handle power well. And with the right education, everyone's good with power. And it's like,
Which is crazy because, like, you're from the White Tower where half the women, probably the majority of the women, are not from noble backgrounds.
But they've still spent centuries being trained on how to live in that world, right? Like, more than most people. So, you can be trained to it, but Rand was just granted power without centuries of being beaten about the head for it first. So, it just feels very much like Cadsuane has not touched grass on that particular subject in a minute.
Which, I mean, yes, she's arrogant and she's being written as such. So, I'm not like against this. I do think this is kind of Cadsuane to a T.
And I think it's very Eyes to Die. I think it's very much the institution of the White Tower as embodied in this nearly 300-year-old member.
Right. And that's sort of how I always thought of Cadsuane, is the embodiment of the ancient, crumbly spirit of the old tower, right? Which is why
the old guard. Yeah.
It just is the worst decision for the new Amyrlin seat after the last battle. I don't understand that at all. The worst, right? Because she is the embodiment of the old tower. Now, maybe you can say the last battle changes her, but I haven't seen any evidence of that.
She admitted she was wrong in her head and to her colleagues in the Aiel this one time, okay? That's growth.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Totally different person.
So, I understood that, Egwene dying was a thing that could be needed to happen, but, moving backwards to Cadsuane was what are you doing? Get Sharina in there if you want an old lady. At least get a new old lady.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that Sharina's ready at all because she hasn't even been raised as to accepted yet, but you know what I mean? It's ridiculous that they picked Cadsuane at the end of all people. She's so calcified and, as you said, crumbling. She's strong. She's that final bit at the very center that lasts till the end, but this is the end. The thing has crumbled. Ah!
Yeah, I like the headcanon that she got out of it somehow.
Yeah, she just vanishes the day before, bye bitches.
Cadsuane dies again. We think.
Yeah, definitely.
Meanwhile, she's got the oaths off of her and she's joined the kin and off riding, I do think that's something she would do, is be like, I'm too old. I'm going to forsake the oaths and join the kin. And
if she could get her hands on the oath rod and say, I forswear all oaths that bind me, done deal. You can't make her Eyes to Die now, or can't make her Amyrlin now. Ha ha. Ah, well, that's not where we're at.
Well, I mean, they can, because they made Egwene the Amyrlin without the oaths on her, but
not if she has a fast horse and she just literally runs away. So yeah, she leaves the inn. She's thinking about stuff. She notices the sea folk with all of their Shanshan ships from the Great Escape. I kind of like that, just little minor detail in the background. She's like, oh yeah, I heard about that big escape that they all managed. Cool, neat.
That
anyway,
was Matt's escape. Yeah,
right. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's factored a lot into Matt's plot, and Cadsuane's just noticing it by the by. I love that one event scene from multiple POV things. That's good. And then she gets her spidey senses tingle because Rand is looking at her as he rides down the street, and she, plays it cool and thinks that she was sneaky, and Rand totally sees her but just allows it to pass because she did keep her hood up, and whatever, they're going to play this weird Eyes to Die mind game together.
So I think that the pattern keeps throwing them together because she's not trying to find him. She's trying to avoid him. And he keeps being like, why is she following me all over the place? Everywhere I go, there she is. And she's not trying to do that, right? She's doing stuff on her own. So I absolutely think there's something Therin pattern going on, trying to throw them back together, trying to fix. For whatever reason, the pattern has chosen Cadsuane to be the one who will have this bright idea, right? And it happens at the end of the scene to grab Rand's dad. And that's what fixes him.
Yeah, I agree. Rand is just a gravity well, and everyone who needs to talk to him will be pulled towards him physically and needs to talk to him. And if you try to avoid him, then it's not going to help particularly.
She sees that darkness out of the corner of her eye again. We've talked about that a bunch. It's ever since he touched the true power.
Yeah. And then she has an idea and heads off to the Aiel to ask them about it, which involves her sitting on the floor. I've been tracking how her and the Aiel interact, and initially, Soralia actually makes the effort to sit in a chair to talk to Cadsuane, and it's awkward, but it, is showing respect to Cadsuane. And at this point, she is coming in and sitting on the floor with them. She is no longer having them sit on chairs with her. Now she is coming to them and immediately seating herself on the floor. Like, her relationship to the Aiel Wise Ones has changed, and I like that.
They respect her as a fellow Wise One. Whether or not she's a, good Aes Sedai, they respect her.
Right.
Which makes me question their judgment, but
She does the things that they respect as strength.
Right. Which is taking authority for herself.
Yeah.
No, that's the real big one. That's what makes a wise one, is someone who can stand up and say, I know what is best.
Yeah.
And Cadsuane is, if nothing else, someone who stands up and says, I know what is best. And I will do whatever it takes to make that happen.
She is profoundly convicted of her rightness. And that is really all it takes for the wise ones.
Now, I do like Nentok says, have a seat over by the beans. But the idea that, sitting on the floor doesn't degrade Cadsuane, but being face first on the floor did degrade Semirhage. Cadsuane is able to humble herself enough to sit down on the floor. And that doesn't lessen her power. It increases it.
Well, because she's coming to the wise ones as equals and saying, I respect you so much, I'm going to follow your way of sitting. She keeps her honor and theirs intact.
Yeah, and I guess it's not like other people are in chairs forcing her down. So it's...
Exactly. She's just like, oh, I don't need you to come to me. I need to come to you. So all I have left in this POV is Sanderson, for once, not spelling something out in absolute triplicate and just sort of leaving us on a hanging note of what Cadsuane's plan is. Dun dun dun, what could it be? She smiles and begins to explain it, and the POV switches, but we know it's Tam. We know it's Tam.
Yeah,
it's just that for once, Sanderson manages to leave a small amount of mystery on the page. So good for him.
However, I will say there's not a lot of clues before the mystery is revealed. There's nothing here where we can go, oh, that's where she was thinking of Tam. It's just I have a plan. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If she'd be I have a plan that involves the two rivers, or I have a plan that involves, or if there's something related to fathers or fatherhood or anything here that gave us a clue.
Yeah, I was looking here because clearly this is the Tam idea, and I was looking really closely. How are her preceding thoughts leading up to that light bulb of moment of, oh, I need to get his dad. He needs to confront his father and be faced with who he was and who he is, and go through that process. I don't see how her preceding thoughts factor into that conclusion. I don't see it. It's very confusing. I'm glad that she thought of it because it does work, but I don't see it. Lilligin says it's about the trust. He didn't seem to trust Aes Sedai. He didn't trust anyone except Min. So it's about trust. Who does Rand trust? Who does he trust that's not in the picture already? His father. I guess, yeah, that must be the thread, because I can't see anything else. I guess.
I'm nodding.
But yeah, it's funny that Sanderson can beat so many other things to death and manage to leave this kind of a little unfulfilling. It's kind of funny. But anyway, she goes to the Aiel. She suggested to the Aiel. The Aiel think it's a great idea. The plan goes forward.
I do she can't figure out why the wise ones can channel and live so long and not achieve agelessness. Come on, the Oath Rod. It's the Oath Rod.
It's obvious. I'm surprised that Cadsuane can think about it long enough to make a sentence about it and not figure it out. That kind of surprises me. But whatever. She's got other shit to think about, I guess. And yeah, she tells the wise ones, I have failed, right? She made that pact with Sorelia to teach him how to cry again and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, no, I've completely fucked it up. I've made zero progress. But I have one last Hail Mary. Yeah. And POV switch to Rand.
This sort of him, and we're seeing because she saw him, so this isn't later. This is him at the exact same time.
Right. This is because she goes to the Aiel and talks to them. He sees her as she goes off to talk to them. Right. So. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Basically, yeah. Concurrently, this is concurrent.
Rand glanced over his shoulder, watching Cadsuane scuttle away. She probably thought he hadn't noticed her hiding there at the side of the street. The cloak hid her face, but nothing could conceal that self-assured posture, not even the clumsy footgear. Even as she hurried, she seemed in control, and others moved out of her way reflexively. She flirted with his prohibition, following him through the town like this. However, she had not shown him her face, and so he let her go. It had probably been a poor move to exile her in the first place, but there was no going back now. He would just have to control his temper in the future, keep it wrapped in ice, steaming deep inside his chest, pulsing like a second heart. You know what happens if you wrap something hot in ice and keep it compressed? Kaboom!
Yeah, this feels like maybe not the most sustainable way to move forward.
And I feel like that's sort of the point, is like he's cracked and solidified, but there's all this pressure building. It's like, you know, the big one with the Pacific Northwest, right? The longer you go and the harder you stiffen, the more pressure builds.
Yeah.
You need to be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. Adaptable, flexible, resilient, not brittle, not compressed, not pressurized. Pressurized is bad, Rand.
That's a bomb.
It's a bomb.
So he's, you know, trying to watch on the food distribution, right? He thinks that's important to make sure that the people who are supposed to get the food, and it doesn't, which, I mean, I feel like that's something we've seen in American peacekeeping missions, is if we just drop the food in areas, oftentimes warlords get it and use it to just get more powerful. The rich get richer if you don't distribute the wealth to the equally.
Yeah, that's generally true of refugee resource management, is you do need infrastructure, not just a pile of food.
We get introduced to the Ashaman Nyneave, who is, as far as I can tell, this is his first introduction, and his Aes Sedai Nulliver Damicelin. That's a rough one. Also, as far as I can tell, brand new to this chapter.
Yeah, and Nyneave we do see repeatedly. He's the first one that Nyneave heals of the madness, if I'm recalling correctly. But yeah, he is new here.
Yeah, he gets a pretty decent storyline from here on out. Like, he becomes one of the, you know, because we get deep into the Black Tower, and he's with Finn for a lot of it, because he's, you know, one of the good ones.
Right. And yeah, he's been part of the communications team between Rand and Tuon to set up this meeting where she isn't being impersonated by Semirog.
And by the way, he's particularly strong in air, in case you care.
Yeah, that's cool.
Unusual.
Oh, right, yeah, because air is the not traditionally male strong, because they are earth and fire, and women are air and water. So that's cool.
Which is something that's kind of dropped as we get later on into the series, because like everyone's just powerful enough with all four elements. It doesn't really matter. 5, sorry.
Yeah, well, both spirit is split equally. But yeah, it's a very subtle difference. It's not like a massive, huge deal. Well, not very subtle, but it's not. Yeah, it's one of those mechanics that is more relevant the lower powered you are.
So, as you say, the Shan-Chan are not willing to meet, you know, basically in neutral territory. So he suggests they just meet in the center of their heart of their territory, which is Falma.
Right, which also just so happens to be the place where he kicked them squarely in the teeth last time.
Right. So it's definitely a double message. I really do like the way that message comes together of like, yes, it's in your territory, but I did fuck you up here once and I will do it again.
Yeah, it's a nice callback to some Book 2 energy. It's very, layered meanings. It's good. I like it as a choice. And then we get the lovely distinction of, we're going to have to work with the Shan-Chan, regardless of our differences. I don't know if thinking that people like us should be enslaved is a difference, really. It feels like more of an existential threat than just a difference, but okay, Rand. Like, we have that conversation just squarely on the page, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and I can see where, like, Tuon would never negotiate with Rand because he is a channeler. I can see where that would be very difficult to arrange, difficult to negotiate around. It's if you can't admit the other person exists or is human, it's difficult to negotiate with them.
Right, which then begs the question of why would you bother negotiating with someone who already has stated they think you're subhuman? Like, why am I giving you the time of day then if you don't see me as a fully human person?
Mm-hmm. Well, and with Rand, it's because I'm not necessarily, he's like, I'm the Dragon Reborn. I'm something different. And they're going to negotiate with the Dragon Reborn to deal with the last battle.
Right. which I get it. He's bigger than life. He's a legend. He's a myth. Like, I get the rationale there, but I do appreciate one of his subordinates pushing back on, this isn't just a difference of opinion. This is slavery. Like, there is a degree that matters here to normal mortals, even if it can't matter to you, Mr. Demigod.
And Rand responds to that pushback in a rational, calm, sane way and takes it into account and absolutely listens to the people around him and incorporates their feedback. And he says, dissension cannot be tolerated. Dissension and lies have brought him to the collar. No more.
He just makes one of his most loyal followers just wilt, like, with the full power of his displeasure. It's, yeah. Super rational, very calm, very measured. Great for coherence. It's very Forsaken. This is not leading with love. This is not leading with coalition. This is leading with fear. It's a super Forsaken mode.
He stares him down until he bows down his head in fear.
Yeah, super Forsaken.
Rand talks about how LTT's been distant since he touched the Dark One.
He's getting him the silent treatment.
Yeah. I wonder if it has something to do with like the way the True Power and the Taint interact with each other, right? Because they're both from the Dark One. You'd think it would almost expand it a little bit or something like that. Or like, yeah, I wonder, because it really feels like Rand has gone insane and what's left is a tiny little sane part of his mind screaming in the corner. And that's the part that's able to create veins of gold. But right now it's totally subsumed in that dark mass that's touching the rest of his brain.
Yeah. I think it's just that Rand is so deeply sunk into his madness that, the voice doesn't necessarily need to be there all the time. He's that deep into the process of having all the voices screaming all the time in his head.
Mm-hmm. This is the whole, like, yes, we do follow a leader who is clearly mad because he's winning.
Right.
But he is clearly mad. Like, this is no longer a sane man. This is, everyone's like, we failed to keep him sane. Now what do we do? Right.
How do we keep the madman continuing to stay oriented on the good and righteous path that leads us to surviving the last battle? So Nyneave comes up. She's got her fusion clothing where she takes local clothes and makes them more Two Rivers-y. And I think that's cute. I like her stubborn adaptability. She's both anding that as hard as she can. She's not going to dress like a Two Rivers woman, but she's also not going to dress like a local. She's somehow going to do both at the same time.
Which is how new fashion is made.
Totally. I like that she's taking the time for that on the side. That's part of how she like blows off steam, is like getting nice clothes that works for her.
Well, and nice clothes have always been part of Nynaeve's character. As much as she's hated to admit it, she's always focused on clothes in a way that the other characters have not, even if that focus was always, that's not modest. You need to wear Two Rivers woolens, right? She's always paid a lot of attention to clothes.
Yeah, and I think she's embraced that about herself more at this point. We're spending less time complaining about clothes, more time adapting them. And I love that for her. I love that growth arc.
Kind of is like, oh, homophobes spend a lot of time thinking about gay men having sex. And you go,
yeah. Why think about that so much? Why are you
so obsessed with it? Yeah. And like that's kind of how Nyneave sees clothes. It's like she loves clothes. She loves clothes so much. And in the beginning, she's so resistant to it. Two woolens are good enough for me. But she is looking at everybody else is wearing these silks with incredible envy. And once she starts getting in them, she has the biggest wardrobe. She gets the nicest clothes. They are custom fit. They are custom designed to do exactly what she wants. She thinks about nothing but clothes.
Yeah, which, like, good for her. She needs a hobby in between juggling her stoic husband and her, childhood charge who's going to save the world. Like, she needs a frivolous, well, not even frivolous. She needs a hobby with very low stakes. She needs that. Good for her, but it's also just... It's a fun thing to watch. Like, you have put up such a fuss, and look at you now, you little fashion maven. Really, Min gets all the credit for being a fashion influencer, but Nyneave is not doing her part in helping the fashion move forward. It's just less radical.
Oh yeah, here's this line. So she and Rand are debating over whether or not he should go meet with Sean Chan, right? She goes, you can't be sure they don't have one of the Forsaken with them. And he's like, yeah, they probably won't. And she's like, can you be sure? And he's like, no. And she sniffed in response, indicating that she'd won that argument.
Don't need that. Don't need that.
The sniffed in response, that was enough.
That's all we
You don't
needed.
have to indicate what she's indicating by it. You don't have to explain that. Don't have to lay it out.
Nope.
Let the sniff rest.
Let sleeping sniffs lie.
Stop me, Shmee.
He thinks about how Nyneave will never make an idealized Sedai, and he considers that like a feature, not a bug. Like the fact that she's so emotional. And he actually says this when he's crossed over into the Veins of Gold space too. He talks to her and he says, never let them change you too much. Like the fact that you are so passionate is one of your features. That's something that stays true from his Forsaken phase into his like Zen phase.
Right.
That part of her is important.
And I feel like it's what contrasts her with Moraine, right? Because Moraine never, ever, ever gave into the emotional side. She was ice cold the whole time. She did what had to be done. Whereas Nyneave does what she feels is right.
Right.
And they will both kick down doors and punch you in the face and go to crazy lengths to do the thing that they feel they have to do. But their motivations are so different. Moraine is such a big picture end game. The means justify the ends. Or the ends justify the means, however you want to say that. And whereas Nyneave is an absolute like, no, you help people now. And that's how you win the last battle. You make everybody better now. And that's how you build a coalition. You heal people now.
Yeah, and as Vuji points out in chat, like both of them end up walking side by side with Rand into the literal pit of hell. Both of those approaches are critical to how Rand is guided into managing everything throughout the series.
Yeah, no, I love the two of them as a pair.
You need both approaches, not one over the other. Like they both have a valuable approach. And yeah, them as a pair at the end is so nice that both of his moms can go in with him. You know? Both of his magic moms.
Both of his magic moms, yeah. Well, and there's very Arthurian legend parts to that too. Merlin and the Lady of the Lake coming together are the magical equivalent of Merlin. Well, and Merlin, of course, being
Tom Maryland,
and that's why I love Moraine and Tom being a pair, because the two of them together are Merlin, right? The old man magic user. Like that's how that myth became legend. They got merged together as a single character named Merlin after Tom Maryland, but it was really the magic power was the Moraine-Lin.
I like it.
The next bit is talking about Lan.
Yeah. This whole thing with Lan is very much heartbreakingly evident that Rand has changed profoundly. The way that he thinks about the way that he thinks about Lan, and like the voice inside of him that's like, he named you friend. It's like, oh, the inflection point is so real if this is how he's approaching Lan's, final ride into his last battle, like Lan's personal last battle. He's like, I think I can use that. Anyway, moving on. It's like, even before, Rand would have been more upset by this.
Yes, but there was always something in him, where Lan said, don't love a woman because when you die, you can't protect her from the hurt, right? And there's something there between Lan and Rand that has always been fatalistic and suicidal. And so there's a certain level of understanding here where I feel like Rand is being like, oh, he's finally doing the thing that he's dreamed of doing. And of course, the thing that I can't wait to do, right? That's his whole promise to Lews Therin. I can't wait to die. Of course, he's not going to try and stop Lan. He sees that as enviable. He sees Lan as doing the thing that he doesn't get to do yet.
Yeah.
So of course he's like, oh, good for him. I'm going to use it.
Right. He's like, my mentor in being toxically masculine.
Is being toxically masculine.
Is getting to do the thing that we both aspire to. Of course, I'm not going to stop my hero from living out his most nihilistic dream. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. But also, I feel like he would have maybe not said this to Nyneave before the strangling, No, and I am firmly convinced, of course, Rand is thinking that, but then part of Rand
is also pissed off that his friend is basically committing suicide, right? Then he deserves what he gets for riding without the rest of us, Rand said. He's jealous. He's jealous, and he's also like, I think he's also a little pissed at Lan for leaving him behind.
Right. He's like, Lan, you were supposed to help me die. You were supposed to help get me to where I need to die. Now you're going to go die without me? Like, how dare you? Yeah. No, there's a lot of complicated feelings because, yeah, Lan's relationship to Rand is unique. There's no one else except maybe Ruark who has that kind of a relationship with Rand as he's gone through this arc into the dark place.
Mm-hmm. Ruark, the only one of the three who actually dies in the last battle.
I don't like that. You didn't like that. I don't like that. I won't like that.
Yeah, the mind-frying compulsion sucks.
So angry.
But yeah, there's again this line of a very quiet place. Deep inside of him was struck with worry over his friend. He had to ignore that worry, silence it, but the voice whispered to him, "He named you friend. Do not abandon him." And to me, this is like, again, we're seeing the reverse of, in the beginning, we just saw phrases of LTT in his head. Now, basically, insane Rand is coming forward, and we're just seeing phrases of the sane Rand in the back of his head. The last remnants of the sane Rand is trying to plead with the insane man who has taken over his body.
Right. He also thinks about how Lan has a choice and doesn't know he's going to die. And he's also got that resentment of like, he knows he's going to die. Like, yes, he wants to die, but also he doesn't have a choice. So he might as well want it. And he's like, Lan still has a choice. And he's using that choice to do the thing I want to do. But he could choose differently. So there's layers of envy. There's layers of jealousy.
There's lots of layers. Yeah, totally. Totally.
And, Nyneave is, much more focused on the humanitarian side of things. And it's like, how dare you? I don't care for all these layers. I'm going to slice through it with a big old knife of you need to help your friend right now.
Yeah, and my husband. I don't want him to die.
Also my husband, mind you. But like, yeah, she's not willing to play these mind games. She's like, help now. And full stop. End of story. Help.
So this is a walk and talk on the way to his new throne room, right? Which is just a fancy room with a throne in it, in this guy's house.
Well, it has the throne of the country has been brought to the mansion. So it's really hard to call it anything other than the throne room. But yes.
The Aiel have been trying to track down all of the Merchants' Council to elect a new king. They've got one who they were able to, Alamindra Curin, they've got, and they found one dead, Misham Dubaris. These people aren't that important.
No. The idea is just that they're collecting some merchant council. They're discovering others are dead. And the process is just going forward slowly. 4
captured, 2 dead. He needs 4 more, which probably means there need to be at least 6 more because 2 more are probably going to be dead.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And, this is one of those things where you've probably found all the easy ones first, right? Like the ones you haven't found yet are going to be harder. Each one you find makes it the rest progressively harder to find.
Right. And then, of course, there's the big question that Ruark and Rand and the audience are all asking, which is why not just appoint people? But he has, this weird stick in his spokes about how this is how it has to be done for whatever reason. So that's what we do. I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. I just feel like he's stubborn.
I mean, he lays it out later in that if he appoints a king, when he dies in the last battle, that no one will believe that king has any power left. They will be overthrown and the country is back into chaos. He's trying to do it in a legitimate way so that the person he leaves behind can say, no, I wasn't elected by the Dragon Reborn. I was elected by you, the council. You just happened to be forced here. And so I still have power and I can still hold this country together and maybe there's a chance for peace, right? Like he is trying, despite him being like, there's no hope for a future after I'm gone, he is building his coalition in a way that he hopes it survives his death.
Yeah. I just would have liked to see him do this in more countries. I guess not as many countries had as much loss of leadership. But yeah, he's committed to it and, I admire his follow through.
And he accepts the crown of swords, not necessarily because he conquered it, but because he sent them food. And he felt that was a legitimate reason to be king.
Right. They offer it to him because he fed them. And he's like, well, that seems legit. That seems like the correct currency transaction to have go down. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting here, too, how he goes to the throne room. He starts on the throne. He goes up to the throne. And then when Ruark comes in, he very deliberately comes down from the throne to sit on the rug with Ruark and talk about things, and then go back up to the throne when he deals with the nobles. Like, he uses that throne like he knows what's going on, right? Like, he makes sure that they see him leave the throne to talk to Ruark and then return to it to talk to them.
I like the line, Ruark he treated with the respect you deserved. The others, well, they would get the respect they deserved as well. And it's just like, yeah, they don't deserve any.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They get the respect they deserve, that they get what they've earned, just like Ruark. He's treating everyone equally in the sense that he judges them on their actions and their loyalty. So yeah, Milicer Chadmar is here to give a report on her messenger that had news of the king, and the news is that he conveniently died 2 days ago by very, very definite coincidence. For sure, nothing suspicious to look at here, except in her case, she doesn't know why it happened, right? Like, she didn't order that. She's freaking out because, as far as she's concerned, it did happen randomly.
Right.
And she has no explanation for it. It's very upsetting for her.
Because we know it was what, the stable boy?
The Chandler's apprentice, Curb.
And he was poisoning the prisoner.
Yes, a slow poison that takes a long time if it's put in your food. And Nyneave doesn't notice it until she goes to check on the prison and notices that Milicer is halfway through the same poisoning process herself. Which happens because in this scene, Rand sentences her to be held in the same prison cell as the messenger, instead of executing her outright for her disloyalty.
Or researching, like, why he was killed. Like, he really does kind of just give up that thread. And is like, oh, well, that's a closed line. He doesn't continue to look and see, like, maybe that person was killed deliberately. If they're killed deliberately, who killed them? Would that person have any orders? Could I follow those orders back to the person who gave them, right? Like, that all seems like something you would do when trying to solve and track down Grendel.
Yeah, well, he knew that Nyneave wanted that plot, so he left it open for her.
Fair. But yeah, he really does kind of like just wash his hands of it really quickly.
Yeah, he just says, oh, well, that's a dead end and I want to punish you, but I don't want to kill you, so that's how I'm going to close that loop. And Nyneave is the one who opens the file again and says, I think there's something you missed here.
Anything to say about Ramshalon?
Ramshalon will be relevant later because he is the guinea pig test dummy that gets thrown into Natrin's barrow to test if Grendel is killed or not. That is the mind that gets sent in to be infected with compulsion, so that way the strength of the balefire can prove that the person who put the compulsion there is gone. That's Ramshalon. Him here isn't really super relevant. It's just fun to know that that guy in that scene later does show up before that scene.
I thought there was a little bit of foreshadowing here for still men like him had their uses occasionally.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, Rand is still really determined to find proof that Grendel is here. So he orders the Aiel to keep looking for more messengers.
He sort of thinks about how removing compulsion would take a healing he can't do, which of course, immediately invokes Nyneave, right? That's why she's going to be involved.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, healing is doing a lot of heavy lifting on the definition of what happens there. It's more of a cutting off all of your limbs because they're all gangrenous. Like, you're not
right.
repaired to the way you were.
Yeah, it's like brain tissue is destroyed, and she can lift the compulsion, but she can't restore the brain tissue that was there and replaced with whatever the compulsion was supposed to be. And I feel like minor compulsions, maybe they just destroy like a memory or something like that. Like, they don't really do that much damage.
Right. You lose an afternoon. But
yeah,
whatever.
right.
Yeah.
But like these big ones, they destroy your personality because your personality is replaced with the drive to do whatever it is you're supposed to do.
Right, yeah, she's disabling and removing entire sections of your processing to replace it with something else. Like, you can't put that back.
So yeah, and here's where it says, is that why I resist naming a Damani king? Once I die, that man would lose his authority and Eredaman would be back to where it begun. If I don't have a king who has the support of merchants, then I'm essentially offering the kingdom up to the Seanchan the moment I die.
Okay, that makes sense. He's feeling very overwhelmed. He's just sort of like looping on the idea that he can't fix everything. He can't fix the world. He can't repair everything. He can't deal with everything. He doesn't have time. He's freaking out. And then Nyneave is like, you have friends that you need to care about. And he just can't. And here is where we get our first hint our most solid confirmed hint that the timelines are completely cattywampus.
Oh,
because
yeah,
he has a
totally
vision
cattywampus.
of Perrin with Galad, which we are nowhere near that happening.
Towers of Midnight, chapter 10.
Yeah, so far away from here. And then the other vision is Matt in Camelin with Tom.
Towers of Midnight, chapter 8.
Right, which we have more setup for that at this point. We have spent more time getting told that Tom and Matt are going to be in Camelin, but we really have no hint of Perrin and Galad coming together at all yet. This was such a weird foreshadowing the first time I read it, being like, Perrin and Galad are nowhere near each other anywhere in the plot, and everything about that happens between here and there. Whereas Matt, at least we know he's trying to get to Camelin. He's trying to be with Tom and to get to the tower. At least that's happening.
To me, it's Sanderson signaling, I am moving this timeline forward further than those other two, and we will catch up with them in the next book.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, this is what we're seeing here is that, like, Rand's timeline is much further along than any of the other timelines. And Towers of Midnight is going to be an almost Crossroads of Twilight-esque step backwards
From Twilight
in
to
time.
midnight.
Yeah.
That's what those books are for.
Yeah. It's really, it's not even, it's recap, but in a way of telling the same thing from another POV, because you need to find out what those characters were doing during that timeline, which is not a bad thing as long as they're not completely focused on that power over in the corner.
Right. Instead, it's just literally these events were happening at the same time and have almost no direct connection to each other. They're just both leading to the same concluding event. And yeah, Rand says, that they're not even really his friends anymore. I barely even know them. They would say the same of me, which is like,
okay,
bleak.
Much.
It's so bleak. It's so dark. He's in such a dark place. He has no connection and doesn't want any. And you can't fire me. I quit. Like, oof. And also, like, I mean, really, this is the core of the difference between where he's at now and where he's going to be with Rand and like what Nyneave brings to it. Besides the cares of the real world, the big world, the entire world, a pair of boys from my little village are meaningless. And that's kind of the entire point is no. A pair of boys from your village is actually the entire point. It's about them all, right? Like caring about the people around you, the people in your world. That is the point of life. That is the point of the wheel continuing to spin. That is the antithesis of what the Dark One wants for the world. Is to care about the people that you grew up with. Like, that is actually what it comes back to, ultimately, in the end.
Meanwhile, Rand gets really pissed when Nyneave expresses, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be so hard. Like, you need friends. And he's like, fuck you. No, I don't. I'm the Dragon Reborn. I'm going to do what I need to do. And if you keep insisting that I take care of myself, I'm going to exile you like I exiled the last person who insisted I take care of myself, which was Cadsuane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he reaches to his his statue, right? That instinct of reaching to her. Because he wants to force Nyneave to do what he wants.
Yeah.
And he's willing to pull out a gun to threaten her with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the beginning of the chapter, he's like, I'm putting all the emotions into a compressed little bomb. And already here at the end of this same chapter, that is breaking down. When Nyneave pushes just a little bit, it starts exploding out again. He's like, wow, I thought I was past this. And it's like, dude, you're not past this. You're really not.
He forced it down. Just push those emotions down, Rand. Just keep pushing them down. I'm sure that's not going to be a problem at all.
Yeah, and just the explosion of, I will not be played with. Give advice when it is asked for. Like, oh, buddy, that's not how you need your elders who have always been there for you to approach you. You need to be able to let them continue to just talk to you. Like, you're going dictatorial emperor at this point. You haven't really been a dictator super often up until this point, but you're really getting into tyrannical dictator space now. It's scary.
No, meanwhile, he sort of runs away and is thinking, a short time longer, you only keep things balanced a short time longer. And it's like, Rand has been running with these things balanced, and like, he's going to fall eventually, I think is the problem.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone's around him is looking like, hey, maybe if you put those on like a cart and pushed it around or accepted some help, like you wouldn't come to a crashing halt. We're all worried about the crashing halt. There's a lot of valuable things like our world you're holding right there, right? Like, and he's thinking, oh, I just need to keep it balanced a short time longer, and then I can just let it all drop. And everyone else is like, yeah, please don't let it all drop. Can you like hand it off to us a little bit better, you know?
Right. Like, can you delegate? Can you take multiple trips from the car to get all these groceries? Like, can we get you a moving dolly? Like, something. And he's like,
meanwhile,
no!
he's like got a fridge perched on his back while he's carrying groceries in his hands and, you know, stomping along, being like, I got it. I don't need help. I'm fine.
Right. And then Nyneave tries to help and he's like, I fucking hate you, Mom. And he goes to his room and he slams the door. And it's just like, I'm just trying to help. Like, dude. He's having a very bad time. He's insisting that he's past anger and then exploding less than half an hour later. Like, it's just, he's oscillating hard between the different bad things.
And, you know, there's always the fact that he's mind linked with Moradin, who's, you know, nihilistic and angry at things too.
Yeah. And that leaves us with the promise to lose Therin here in the readout.
Yeah. Rand's anger surged. He spun, pointing at her. Would you end up exiled like Cadsuane, Nyneave? He bellowed. I will not be played with. I am done with that. Give advice when it is asked for, and the rest of the time, do not patronize me. She recoiled, and Rand gritted his teeth, forcing the anger back down. He lowered his hand, but realized it had begun to reach reflexively for the access key in the pocket at his side. Nynaeve's eyes fixed on it, opening wide, and he slowly forced his hand away from the statuette. The explosion surprised him. He thought his temper controlled. He forced it down, and he had a surprisingly difficult time of it. He turned and stalked from the room, throwing open the door, his maidens following him. I will have no more audiences today, he told the attendants who tried to follow him. Go and do as I have told you. I need the other members of the Merchant Council. Go! They scattered. Only the Aiel remained, guarding him as he made his way to the rooms he had claimed in the mansion. A short time longer. He only had to keep things balanced a short time longer. Then it could end. And he found he was beginning to look forward to that end, as much as Lews Therin did. You promised we could die, Lews Therin said between distant sobs. I did, Rand said, and we will.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.